Ever since terminals were added to CS2, I've been hearing one thing above all else. They're a scam. And that fascinates me, because if anything, I've always thought that cases were one of the most scammy mechanics out there. Yet as soon as this new method arrived, cases suddenly became royalty. So it's had me thinking in recent weeks, why does everyone think this? Is it the concept of Valve greed? Do people genuinely think these game mechanics are meant to make them as much money as Valve? Or perhaps terminals really are a scam? Let's take a look. If you're not familiar with how terminals work, here's a quick rundown. You either get one from your weekly care package or buy one directly. When you open it, you're shown up to 6 offers, although most terminals only have 5. For each offer, you can either accept or decline. If you decline, you move on to the next offer and can't go back. If you accept, you simply pay the price shown and get the item. Pretty straightforward. The biggest criticism though is that some of these skins can cost as much as $2,000. Unlike a case where getting lucky means paying around $2.50 and receiving a knife or pair of gloves, getting lucky in a terminal simply gives you the opportunity to buy that item. And I think that's really the heart of the problem. So let's break it down numbers wise and answer the first question. Is it cheaper to unbox a pair of gloves from a case or from a terminal? This video's sponsor, SkinSwap, is giving you a skin worth up to $50 entirely for free whenever you do your first trade and use my referral code. If you want to refresh your loadout, you can trade your skins for brand new ones in just a couple of seconds. Plus, their market tab now integrates cheap listings from Chinese sites so you can access the best prices without the need for a Chinese ID or bank account. They accept deposits via crypto, MasterCard, and Visa. If you want to cash out, SkinSwap makes that simple too with instant sell options to PayPal or crypto. On top of that, they run free daily, weekly, and monthly giveaways with the chance to earn extra entries simply by trading. Use the link below for a 3% lifetime sales bonus and a free skin worth up to $50. Big thanks to SkinSwap for supporting the channel. With the help of CS ROI, I put together this table. It lists all of the cases containing gloves as of the 1st of July, the price of the case itself on CS Float, the cost to open, which is simply the case price plus a $2.49 key, the average value of a gold unbox, the average unbox per case, the average unbox value of a case if we exclude golds, which heavily skews the results, the statistical ROI if you were to open infinitely many cases, and then finally the average cost to unbox a gold, which simply multiplies the cost to open by 391, since the odds to unbox a gold are 1 in 391. Now of course this cost to unbox gold doesn't paint the whole picture, because you obviously get skins along the way that you can resell to help cover the cost. So if we take the cost to open value, minus the average unbox without a gold, and then multiply by 391, we get some values that start to look a little better. For instance, in the recall case, we take $2.83 minus 64 cents multiplied by 391, which equals 856, instead of the 1,107. That $856, however, is still 546% higher than the average gold price. That's to say, you're spending roughly 5 times the amount of money to unbox a gold compared to just buying one directly. Now, of course, this is all based on averages. You could get lucky and unbox a pair of gloves worth more than $856, but the odds of this happening are probably much worse than you think. In fact, there are only 2 pairs of minimal wear gloves, the slingshots and the knocks, and just 8 factory new gloves that sell for above $856. So out of all glove drops, only about 5% sell for more than the unbox cost. The average ROI column already looks bad, but if we take out the return provided by the gloves, it gets significantly worse, especially on those cheaper cases, which is what most people are actually opening. Of course, keep in mind that if you're just opening 10, 20, or even 100 cases, chances are you won't see a single gold, and instead see ROIs in the 20 to 30%. So that's the reality of cases. Even under average conditions, you're spending a minimum of $800 just to see a pair of gloves, and roughly 95% of the time, you'll still lose money on them. Now let's compare that to terminals. For this comparison, we can only look at the dead hand, since Genesis doesn't contain any golds. And as of the time of recording, it's selling for $1.08 on CS Float. Calculating the expected value here is a lot more complicated. Unlike cases, each terminal can show multiple offers. Valve constantly adjusts skin prices based on acceptance rate data that we don't have access to, and depending on when someone accepts an offer, they'll end up seeing a different number of offers overall. So there isn't one simple calculation that gives us the answer. Instead, we need to approach it from a few different angles. First, let's imagine that all we care about is getting a pair of gloves. In that case, we only need to work out how many terminals we'd have to open on average to see a gold offer. Terminals use this same underlying multiplying drop rates as cases, but each offer is effectively rolled independently. That means every terminal gives you 5 offers with a 10% chance of a 6th, averaging 5.1 offers per terminal. Since the odds of seeing a gold are still 1 in 391, we simply divide 391 by 5.1, giving us 76.7, roughly 77 terminals. At the current price of $1.08 each, it costs a total of $83 to see our gold offer on average. Now, of course, that doesn't include the price of actually buying the gloves, but it does mean you get to the point where you can make a conscious decision. Do you pay Valve's asking price, buy it elsewhere for less, or skip entirely? I'm giving away an AK-47 Vulcan in Field Tested this month. For your chance to win, simply like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. I'll pick the winner on July 31st. Good luck. That's a huge difference compared to cases, because if you unbox something like a gut knife rust coat, chances are you'd insta-sell it and rather have received almost anything else. But with terminals, if you don't like an offer, you simply skip it and save that money for something you'd actually want in your inventory. And because you can see an average of 5.1 offers for just $1.08, each skin offer effectively only costs 21 cents. And that number could fall even further if terminal prices continue to drop. Compare that to the cheapest glove case, the Revolution case, which currently costs $2.78 for a single offer. That's over 13 times more expensive. This is obviously a simplified comparison. We assume you decline every offer that isn't gloves and only care about seeing a gold. But what if you could recover some of your costs by buying skins that could be resold for a profit? Well, over the past few months, I've opened close to 1,000 dead hand terminals, collected a huge amount of data on Valve's prices and real resale values, and used that information to refine my strategy. In fact, I had multiple separate opening sessions that finished in profit, and even after spending more than $6,000 on terminal and skin purchases, I actually came out ahead overall. I won't break down the entire method to obtain the numbers I'm about to use, as I already explained it all in this video if you want to take a look. But I found the expected value of a terminal to be roughly $3. Simply put, taking the average accepted offers and multiplying the drop rate odds by purchase price minus resale price, you can expect on average to get about $3 back per terminal, not taking into account any fees or the price of the terminal itself, which was about $1.50 at the time. There are a couple of important caveats though. This estimate only uses average data from the offers I actually accepted. In reality, the true expected value would be a little lower, but collecting a more accurate figure would have required manually recording thousands of offers, so this was the most practical estimate I could produce by myself. Using some of my data, I think this comparison between the Revolution case and Dead Hand Terminal is particularly interesting. The Revolution case data shares the average unbox based on current CS2 prices for each rarity, and then multiplies those by the odds to calculate the expected percentage of the return provided by each rarity. So for instance, over the long run, the blues offer up 8.45% of the money you get back, despite being opened about 80% of the time, whereas the reds offer up 27% of the return, whilst only being opened about 0.64% of the time. I chose Revolution as it's currently the cheapest case to open gloves from, part of the active duty pool, and the most unboxed case every month. For the Dead Hand Terminal, I've used the data from my own unboxings, where the average return per rarity was just the average profit on every sale, again excluding the price of the terminal. But interestingly, this time around, we cannot simply multiply these values by the normal odds because my acceptance rate was quite different to this. Whilst I was only shown gloves on roughly 0.26% of the total offers, the percentage of gloves redeemed relative to all the skins I accepted was 1.42%, bringing the return from the gloves to 46. So let's say we don't actually hit any gloves. How much money could we reasonably get back? Well, according to my estimations, it's somewhere between 60 to 75%. That's significantly higher than any of the cheaper glove cases. And whilst the glove and Hydra case come closer, they also cost $17 and $34 respectively for every unbox, which is simply out of reach for most people. Admittedly, these returns can be improved by using the Steam Balance Boost method, which I explain in depth in this video. This can reduce the price of keys by about 30%, making cases cheaper to open. With this method, we can bring up the average ROI slightly, as I've laid out here. Indeed, this method can also be used when buying terminal skins, reducing the purchase price and increasing the margin, and is an essential factor in my calculations throughout the video. I think now could be a good time to summarize everything we've covered with a direct side-by-side comparison of cases versus terminals. If you don't hit a gold, the average return from the Revolution case is about 26%, compared to roughly 60 to 75 for the Dead Hand Terminal. If you do get lucky and hit a gold, that increases to around 43% for the Revolution case, while the Dead Hand can actually become profitable overall if you use the right strategy and have a large bankroll. On average, it costs about $862 to see a gold from cases, compared to just 83 to see a gold offer in the dead hand. Of course, with the terminal, you still have to decide whether you actually want to buy them, but I'll come back to that in a moment. If you resell the skins you get along the way to offset your costs, those averages fall to around $639 for the Revolution case and just $29 for the dead hand. Remember, these figures assume you'll see a gold every 391 cases or every 77 terminals. In reality, you can easily go on much longer dry streaks than this. As for the best potential unbox, our max win, the Revolution case offers the chance to unbox a pair of factory new Vice gloves worth around $6,000. Meanwhile, the most desirable item in the dead hand is a pair of factory new Ultraviolets. Assuming Valve charges close to the wallet cap and you're able to resell them for roughly $6,000, you'd walk away with a profit of around $4,000. Finally, there's the minimum amount you'd need to spend to potentially see a gold. With the Revolution case, assuming you receive the case from your weekly drop and use the balance boost method for cheaper keys, that figure is just $1.92. With the dead hand, you could technically see a gold without spending a cent if the terminal came from your weekly care package. However, if you actually wanted to buy that gold, you'd likely need at least $100 available, even for one of the cheapest glove offers, and that price can climb all the way to $2,000. I also wanted to touch on a few factors that aren't driven by the data, things that are much harder to quantify. For instance, I think cases are simply more exciting. The slot animation, the dramatic reveal, and the possibility of hitting something incredible at a small price point creates a much bigger dopamine rush. Therefore, they're also far more entertaining to watch, which is a big reason why case unboxing videos remain so popular compared to the slower pace of terminal openings. On the flip side, cases are pure chance. There's no decision making and no strategy. You're completely at the mercy of the odds. And to me, that's what makes terminals interesting. You actually have some agency. You can make decisions, refine a strategy, and try to maximize your outcome. It's rewarding in a completely different way. It doesn't deliver the same adrenaline rush as watching the gold icon fly across your screen, but if you're someone who enjoys problem solving or simply trying to beat the system, I think terminals can be just as fun. So let's come back to our initial question. Are terminals a scam? According to the Cambridge English Dictionary, a scam is a dishonest plan for making money or getting an advantage, especially one that involves tricking people. By that definition, I don't think terminals are a scam. In fact, I'd argue they're a more transparent system than cases. Before you spend any money on a skin, you already know exactly what you're getting, its rarity, float, and the price Valve is asking. And this makes sense given their current legal battles. Yes, that means you lose the chance to spend $2 and walk away with an item worth thousands. But let's be honest, almost none of us are actually unboxing that butterfly emerald. Instead, terminals give you far more control over where your money goes, and with the right approach, even the opportunity to come out ahead. And I think that's something a lot of people overlook. Now, do I think the terminals are perfect? No. They're definitely more complex than cases, especially for the average casual player. And sure, you could argue there's an element of Valve greed in charging hundreds or even thousands of dollars for some of these offers. But at the same time, CS has one of the most established digital economies. It survived for well over a decade and has become a genuine hobby for collectors, traders, investors, and casual players alike. If rare items could suddenly be obtained for next to nothing, that entire economy would inevitably suffer. Of course, plenty of people would argue that's exactly what should happen, so ultimately we'll just have to see how Valve continues to develop the system. At the end of the day, it's your money and your decision. Would you rather leave everything to chance with cases and risk it for the biscuit, or have a little more control over the outcome while reducing variance? If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. And if you want to learn more about the strategy I've been using to make terminals profitable, check out this video next. Thanks so much for watching, and take care.